Welcome to Unlock Your Wellbeing, the podcast that teaches you the simple keys to health and happiness so that you can grow as a human being into a well-being. And now here's your host, author, certified wellness coach, mother and wife, Alisha Leytem. Hello. Welcome back, you guys, to another episode of Unlock Your Wellbeing with me. I am pumped to be here today. The topic is something that is very timely because I'm sitting here in my office recording this for you on a January day, and I think it's like 14 degrees Fahrenheit outside. I was actually just taking my dog out before I sat down to record this, and the cool, fresh air just definitely woke me right up and prepared me to sit down and share some of my favorite winter wellness tips with you guys today to really help you get through the second half of winter, which by the time this podcast is released, it will be about halfway through winter. So for those of you who are living in a climate with 4 seasons, I am making this specifically for you. In fact, to prepare for this podcast today, I remembered that many years ago, actually in 2015, I recorded one of my very first YouTube videos, and it was my winter wellness tips. So to prepare for this episode, I rewatched myself, okay? So if you want to see your own personal growth, just record yourself teaching something and then watch it, 7 years later. But I was kind of chuckling throughout it because everything I was saying, I still say today. Pretty much the same thing. There's a few, updates and things that I share that build upon what I spoke about many years ago, but it was pretty comforting to see me talk about that. And one thing that I stressed in that video that I still very much believe today that I really want to stress is that I just get so frustrated sometimes when I hear people complain and hate on winter. And the reason for this is because, you guys, winter is a fourth of your life, sometimes longer, of every year, right? So if you live in a 4-season climate, one season, which is a pretty long season sometimes, is winter. And that's a lot of your life that you're hating on and trying to, just throw away or wish it away or be really unhappy in the day. And so I made a decision a long time ago that I was not going to live like that and that I was going to embrace every part of life, including winter, and I was always going to look for the beauty in it. And I spoke about that on that YouTube video, and I stand by that still today. I love winter. I love what it represents. I love the magic behind it. I love the stillness that it forces us to have. I love the beauty of it. I love how it makes summer so much sweeter. I just love so much about it. And so in this episode, I'm going to share with you a bunch of tips that can really help you embrace this season, from nutrition to supplementation to getting outside to improving your mindset and your happiness, and an actual process that you can use to really embrace this time of year. So hang on tight as we dive right in. So before we begin with my actual tips for you, I want to read this quote about winter because it really is the essence of what I'm speaking about today, okay? So this is by Edith Sitwell. Winter is a time for comfort, for good food and warmth, for the touch of a friendly hand, and for a talk beside the fire. It is the time for home. I love that and fully embrace it. Because one thing that I think that winter teaches us that may be a big reason why winter gets a really bad rap is because it actually forces you to slow down. It forces you to stay in, it forces you to get quiet, to tune inward, it forces you to accept, right? And to have more alone time, have more solo time. This isn't as much of a social time of year. And I think that this can make people who base a lot of their self-worth on being productive, quote unquote, and like constantly doing things and constantly seeing things and constantly always, full schedule from the minute they wake up, from the minute they go to sleep, feel really uncomfortable that they don't know what to do with themselves when it's time to slow down and go within, right? Which is exactly what winter is here to teach us about ourselves. There's a reason that nature goes through these seasons, okay? There is a time and a place for the go, 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 and the doing and the running and the exploring and the just being outside all the time, like in the summer, seeing people socializing, like, right? It's summertime. But then there's also a time, and it's very necessary. We can't run at that pace, that kind of energy all the time. You gotta slow down sometimes, just like winter and the beauty of nature shows us. Nature knows. Nature always knows. So, where are some things that we can do to help us embrace the season a little bit more? Okay. Now, I understand that some of us, I think it's about, yep, I'm looking at my notes right here, 20 to 35% of people struggle with mild to severe forms of seasonal affective disorder, which is also known as SAD. And so totally get that some of us feel, a really big toll that winter can provide or offer or make you feel. And so some of these tips are going to really help you feel a lot better by boosting your serotonin levels so that you can feel happier, right? There's a lot of easy ways that in your habits and in your lifestyle that you can make these like little subtle changes. So let's start with your food and your nutritional intake. So one thing that we really want to make sure you're doing in the winter time, especially when you are in areas where it's mostly dark throughout those 4 or 5 months, usually 4, sometimes 5 months, is to supplement with vitamin D. And this is because your mood and your hormones rely on vitamin D to function optimally. Now, typically you're not spending a lot of time outside in the winter, so your exposure to sun is pretty much non-existent unless you live somewhere south where you get to wear a bikini year round. So you want to make sure that you're supplementing with and adding an actual supplementation of vitamin D during this time of year. And make sure that you're getting a really good quality vitamin D. I have been taking a vitamin D3 supplement that has K2 in with it. And the reason for the K2 is it helps to absorb the vitamin D better into your system. And one thing my holistic doctor told me when I moved back to the Midwest was that most people in this area are very deficient in vitamin D this time of year, and that can be a problem, right? So making sure that you're doing that with supplementation. The other thing that you can do with your actual food intake is to eat more foods that have vitamin D within it, right? So I'm talking lots of egg yolks and some wild caught fish, etc., etc. Along the lines of food, it's really important, you guys, that you still are eating seasonally, even in the winter. If you are just tuning in for the first time, I encourage you to go listen to the first episode of this season where I talked about the importance of seasonal eating in terms of your nutrition, and it's the easiest thing you can do to increase your nutritional levels. But the other thing that's really important to eat seasonally is, I was just reading about this the other day, which is like fascinating to me, is that your gut can pick up on the foods that you're eating and align itself and know what season it's in, and then prepare your body at a higher level to be able to be more in tune with the season and therefore increase your overall health and well-being, right? So if in the winter you are eating foods that are like salads that were brought in from the South, right? And you're eating watermelons that were flown in from different islands and tons of bananas and so much fresh food, then the gut is thinking that, okay, it's spring, right? And it's going to try to do what it needs to align with the season, but you're confusing it, and you're actually going to increase your gut health when you're eating seasonal foods. So what are seasonal foods in the winter? Lots of root veggies, lots of animal protein, okay? Lots of fat, and soups and warm foods, right? Like roasted things. There is a reason why we tend to be like really drawn to those types of foods in this time of year. It's because nature knows our body is naturally in tune with the seasons, and it works optimally when we work with it, right? Like we don't need to go against nature. So work with that. There's a reason that our ancestors ate more of the foods that they canned themselves and more of the veggies that they stored in the root cellar downstairs, right? And eating lots of bone broths and soups and more fats. And then naturally, what happens in the spring is, wow, I'm really craving these salads, or I'm just really craving all of these beautiful herbs that I've been growing in my garden, and you just naturally eat lighter. Again, there's a reason for it, right? So make sure you're focusing on eating lots of healthy fats, lots of your root veggies. So these are like carrots and beets and sweet potatoes and regular potatoes. Just make sure that they're organic, especially your regular potatoes, because all of the nutrients are actually in the skin of the potatoes. And potatoes are like one of the worst foods to get non-organic, because it's in the ground, or they grow in the ground, and the soil is just filled with things that you do not want to be eating, okay? So that's why I make sure that they're certified organic, and always keep the skin on the potatoes, and you will have a nutrient-dense meal. The other thing I highly recommend that you do, and I've been doing this for the last few years, is every week make a big pot of soup with some homemade bone broth that you made. So this is how I do this. I promise you it's so much simpler than it sounds. Stick with me. So every week I make an organic chicken for my family, okay? I buy it preferably locally, even better, okay? But if I can't get it locally, then I'll get an organic chicken at my natural food store. So I'll put the whole chicken in the Instant Pot. Cook it for about 29 minutes with a little bit of either water, or if I have some leftover bone broth, I'll put it in with that, and it's perfect. Then we eat the chicken, shred it, whatever, throw the bones back into the Instant Pot, the carcass, everything goes back in, fill it back up with filtered water, and add just a little bit of apple cider vinegar, just like a dash, maybe a tablespoon or so. And the reason you add apple cider vinegar is that is the tool that really helps to draw out all of the nutrients from the bones, such as the collagen, okay? Collagen, very important. Put the Instant Pot back on high pressure for 2 hours. Sometimes, like my Instant Pot has the soup setting. So I'll put it on the soup setting for 2 hours, let it go, and you're good to go. Now you have your bone broth, strain out everything that you put in it, all the carcass, strain everything out, put it in some big mason jars, hold those off in the fridge, and then use that bone broth to make a soup. Now, what I'll typically do is the next day I'll have a bunch of the leftover chicken that we didn't eat straight from after I cooked it, and I will use that to make some kind of soup. I'll just toss in some, root veggies that I have and a bunch of spices, maybe some beans, some canned tomatoes that I got from either someone who canned them locally or I can them, or if I can't find that, then I'll get that from the store, and make a soup with that. Okay? Bone broth is so healing, so healthy for you, and really, really powerful to get, especially in the winter, to boost your immune system, especially your gut health, because I don't know if you know this, but 80% of your immune system is built upon your gut health, right? So the healthier your gut, the healthier you are overall. Okay. Also, if you don't have an Instant Pot, you can put the carcass in a slow cooker. Do the exact same thing that I said. Fill it with filtered water, any other veggie scraps that you have. I didn't mention that before, but I'll hold on to all my veggie scraps and throw them in a bag and keep them in the freezer throughout the week. And then when I make the bone broth, I'll just toss all of the veggie scraps in with it. Anyway, if you have the slow cooker, same thing, a dash of apple cider vinegar, but you want to keep it on low for about 12 hours. So when I used to do it primarily in the slow cooker before I had my Instant Pot, I would put it in and let it do its thing overnight. So when I woke up in the morning, the bone broth was ready for me then. Okay? So I can't wait to hear how many of you start to incorporate the weekly chicken and bone broth, then soup routine in the winter. It's amazing. Okay. So what do I have next for you? Next, sleep. Let's talk about sleep. Now, I find it so interesting that a big tip I see a lot when it comes to, winter coming around is sometimes I will see people say, continue to get up, at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., and stay to your exact routine, and don't let the weather affect you, and don't let, the days shorter affect you. And it's like, I couldn't disagree more. And I think our ancestors would agree with me as well, because it actually was not uncommon for our ancestors to sleep, 12, 14 hours a night during the winter months because the sun was down. And what's the reason for this is we have, our natural rhythm that our circadian rhythm is with the sun. And so naturally you want to stay up later and you have more energy in the summer when the sun's up till 9, sometimes 10 at night, at the height of the sunlight. But in winter, it's okay to sleep more. In fact, your body might be naturally craving it. And so allow yourself to consider sleeping maybe a little bit longer than you normally do throughout the other, times of the year. Just make sure that when you get up in the morning, one of the best things you can do to set your circadian rhythm is to get some morning sunlight on your bare skin. You don't want to have anything covered up on your skin, including sunscreen. Go outside even for, a minute or two, and just, if the sun is out, getting some of that on your skin, it's going to really set your circadian rhythm so that this is a natural flow and you're not going to have to try to force anything. I'm not about forcing. I'm about working with the season, and I think that's a really important part of it. So amp up your sleep routine at this time of year. One thing that I'd love to do to make a really beautiful, deep night of sleep, I used to be able to do this all the time before I had my baby. And I'll get back to this, once we're through the really young years here. Everything is temporary, that's okay. But if you have the time and you're able to do this, I encourage you to take a detox salt bath before you go to sleep, like an hour or two before you go to bed. It's really healing for the body, adding a big cup of unscented, make sure they're unscented, Epsom salts, and soak in a really hot bath and have a couple candles in there. Dive deep into your book, because this is naturally the time of year that, we're reading more. So make sure you embrace that. And just let your whole body just warm up and soak up all that good magnesium from the Epsom salts. Your body will be warm. You can chill out and drink some tea on the couch afterwards, and then prepare yourself for going into sleep for the night with your humidifier running in your room to help with your skin throughout the night. It's like the best thing ever, right? So just really lean into a beautiful routine of sleeping more, not being afraid to go to bed a little bit earlier, waking up, closer to the sun, or getting outside as soon as you can in the morning and getting that sunlight on you so that you will have an easier time falling asleep that night and staying asleep throughout the night too. Okay, my top winter movement tips for you, okay? The thing about moving in the winter is you still want to move, right? You still want to make sure you're exercising and you're moving. It's really important for your immune system to be doing that, right? Your heart health, your lung health, your entire cardiovascular system. Like, it's really important that we continue to move. However, I think it's a mistake if we do the same workout routine throughout the entire year for the same reason that I just explained about your sleep, right? And your food. Every season, you are kind of shifting your lifestyle and your habits just a little bit to match the season that you're in. That's the biggest takeaway that I want you to, leave from today. And your movement, your exercise is the exact same thing. So one thing that I love to do in the winter with movement is taking hot yoga classes. Now, I personally have not been able to go to an actual studio with a hot yoga class for quite a while now, due to the pandemic and whatnot, and now I live quite a ways away from one. So what I do is I set up my yoga mat in a corner right here in my office, and I get my space heater going into the room and making it as warm as I can, so that when I get on my mat and move, it feels so good, and it's really, really a beautiful movement to do in the winter. The other thing you want to focus on is making your workout shorter but more efficient, okay? Again, naturally in the spring, you just want to move more. I don't know if you feel this way. I definitely do. You just like, oh wow, I just want to go for a run. I just want to be outside. I just want to move. I want to go to these workout classes and, be more active. Like, you naturally feel that way in spring. But in the winter, it kind of, it is not as natural to want to do that. And so what you want to do is focus on shorter but more efficient workouts. So I'm talking like 15, 20-minute weightlifting sessions. Like, I love doing a workout with my kettlebell and just bust it out, short, quick, done, right? You can also do some HIIT workouts, and you can even go for a hike outside and take your workouts outside. Now, this is kind of going into my next tip for you. They overlap with each other, which is making your workouts outside. And yes, still doing that in the winter, I think, is really important and powerful, because when you do a couple of these in at the same time, you're hitting, two birds with one stone. So yes, still go outside. Still go outside. Now, you're not going to be able to be outside as long as you would like to as other times of year, but being outside can really increase your happiness levels, right? Because you're like, oh, right, I'm still able to go outside. I'm not able to be outside as long as I want to, but just being outside will uplift your mood and your energy, like full stop on its own. And so doing that kind of reminds you of like this fresh air, and like you get to just be out there. And there's so many cool things that you can do in the winter outside and still moving your body. So these are things like going snowshoeing, going for a short hike, going skiing, going snowboarding, and going sledding, right? All of those things are actually also moving your body, and getting you out into nature and getting you that fresh air that's really important in the winter, because the inside air tends to be a lot more polluted and toxic than outside. So getting outside as often as you can, even for short bursts here or there, like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, me going outside for 5 minutes, is helpful, right? So all these little times that you go outside really add up a lot. Now, that brings me to my next point, which is making sure that you are still detoxifying your home by opening up your windows in the winter. I think a lot of us don't tend to do this because it's cold, but it's really important to open some windows, like even for just a few minutes at a time, every few days, so that you can get a big wind of fresh air coming in. It's going to clean everything out. I saw this really cool tip the other day that I had started doing, and I'm going to tell you it too. Okay, so what you can do is start at one window in your home, open the window, go to the next window, open that window, and go to every single window in the house until they're all open. Then go back to that first window that you had opened, close the window, go to the next one, close that window, and then go until you close all of the windows. And so that amount of time that it takes you to open all of them and then go back and close them all, that's like the perfect amount of opening it, no matter how cold it is, letting that fresh air in, and getting like that boost of clean, fresh air inside the home. I'm like actually really obsessed with it, especially since I have a gas stove. I really like to make sure that I crack open the window, when we have that running, because I cook quite a bit. And we have a real fireplace, which we have fires going almost every single night in the house. And so opening that window up every little bit during the fire as well is super important. Now, why do I have a fire going almost every night in the house? This is bringing me to one of my next points, which is a really, really cool lifestyle of creating feeling of coziness and happiness during these dark times of the year. And you may have heard of it before, but over in Scandinavia, specifically the Danish culture, they engage in something called the Hygge lifestyle. Okay, so the Danish concept of Hygge is basically finding comfort, pleasure, and warmth in simple, soothing things, such as a cozy atmosphere or food, tea, low lights, and candles, dim lights, fires, books, cozy socks, big warm scarves that you wear inside the house, reading books. I think I just said that. Anyway, the concept is that you are creating this atmosphere of coziness, and it's something that is really just part of their culture, that they don't necessarily like go out of their way to do it. They just like live it. I just watched recently a video of the man who wrote the book on, it's called The Little Book of Hygge. I'm going to have the link to this in the show notes for you. But he has a video on YouTube where someone interviewed him and asked him, all about Hygge. And they said, explain more to us about how this is part of your lifestyle. And he said, well, I can't say that it's something additional that we do. It's just kind of who we are, kind of like how freedom is to Americans. Like that's just who they are and who they feel that they're at the end of the day. Hygge is what is to the Danish, right? And so that kind of helped me understand what that means in terms of lifestyle. But it's really, really powerful to practice Hygge to improve your levels of happiness throughout the winter, and really just embrace this time of year. Like I've been saying, this time of year is a time to slow down and get super cozy and wear really comfy, cozy clothes. And, you know, as soon as the sun goes down, we stop work maybe a little bit earlier in the winter, or you dive really deep into a creative project and you get to work like it feels like you're working late into the night, but really you just get to work on your creativity or whatever, you know, passion project. You know, as the sun is down and, you know, those first few hours of darkness in the night, and having like a big pot of soup going, and the lights are dimmed and low throughout the house, and you have your candles going and your beautiful scents, and a big cup of warm herbal tea with after you finish eating your delicious meal, and you just cozy it up with you and one or two other people. I think they say that the perfect amount of people to hygge with is 3 total. So anyway, if you're interested in learning about that concept and the lifestyle of really just creating coziness with intention, by cherishing all of the little things, highly encourage you to look into that a little bit more. So hygge is spelled Hygge, and it's so fun. I love it so much. And I've said a couple of times, but the 1 or 2 things that you can do to bring more hygge into your daily life is to embrace the darkness. And so at night, instead of having and turning on all of your house lights and making everything super bright with these, like, you know, fluorescent, harsh lighting, embrace the darkness and only have a few lights on in the house, very low, and then have candles going in other areas. So like when I'm cooking late at night, I do not like having the big lights on. I like cooking by candlelight, and I still have a couple of like tea lights up on above my cupboards. I have that on. I have one little light over the sink, and I like to keep it low lit, right? Because that's the coziness. That's an example of the little things of cherishing like the beauty of the darkness and having a little bit of light behind it. And then, of course, always having our fire going at night. That provides a really beautiful element as well. And then having a cup of tea and reading a little book at night are some things that you can do to cherish, and that doesn't have to take a long time. So some of my favorite herbal teas that I love drinking this time of year are rooibos and chamomile. Yes, rooibos and chamomile tea. Kind of on a kick with both of those right now. In the past, I had been obsessed with peppermint tea at the end of the night, but I am still breastfeeding, and so peppermint can actually lower your milk production. So I kind of stay away from drinking like a ton of it all the time. But if you're not breastfeeding, peppermint tea is another really beautiful one. Just try to make sure that you get your teas organic, and if you can, get loose leaf teas, because unfortunately there's a really big problem going on with the microplastics throughout the world, and they're finding that every single tea bag has a lot of microplastics in it. And so very sad that that's what's happening, is it's everywhere, including our organic tea bags. But one thing that I've been doing to kind of get around that is I just buy a big bag of loose leaf tea, and I will make a pot of tea with that loose leaf tea so I can get around not, steeping my water in one of the bags that has all the microplastics. But if you can't get around that, try not to, fret about it. Don't add any extra sugar to your tea if you can help it. Some local organic honey, if you do any, is really great, because that's, local, and it's going to boost a good part of your immune system with that. But at the very least, just make sure your tea is organic. Okay, what is the other thing that I wanted to say here? I think that, oh, right. The last thing I wanted to say is thinking about the way you think about winter. Just reflect on it. Are you the type of person who complains about it and can't wait for it to be over and said, oh, here we are with winter again? I dislike it, maybe a different choice of words, right? And instead, how can you allow yourself to self-reflect and be grateful for for what it is? How can you fully embrace it? And what kind of thoughts can you start thinking that will allow you to do that? And again, one of my biggest tips is to make the decision, right? When you're starting to create new belief systems and start to genuinely believe something new, it starts by thinking a new thought. Now, the first time you think that new thought, that doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden going to deeply have, this new belief system, but it is going to plant this seed that you can turn into a new belief system. The more that you water that seed, the more you kind of, nurture it. And so this is a season of self-nurturing. How can you nurture yourself even more during this slow time? How can you embrace being and loving at home and living the cozy life knowing that it's going to end, right? And everything that ends has a beauty in the middle of it. So just embrace what it is here for you. Embrace all parts that nature has to offer you. And I promise you that you will start to really appreciate and love what winter is here to show you about yourself and about life in general. So I would love to hear from you guys what your biggest tip and takeaway was from today. You can connect with me over on LinkedIn. You can connect with me on Instagram. You can sign up for my book launch list on my email list over on my website, AlishaLeytem.com. You can just email me. I would love to hear from you and let you know what your biggest takeaway was from today. And something really exciting that we're going to be launching as a segment of this podcast is I'm going to be opening up a Q&A session at the end of each podcast, and it's going to be called Ask Alisha. And so if you have a question that you would like to ask me, you can head to my website, AlishaLeytem.com, and there will be a place that you can submit your question. Or if you would just like to email Alisha at AlishaLeytem.com and ask your question, hopefully we can answer that for you in an upcoming episode. So thank you guys so much for being here. Cannot wait to share more with you and continue on this journey of our first season of the podcast together as we work towards our book, The 6 Gold Keys to Wellbeing, that will be out in spring of 2022. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll see you soon.